Here we are. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the House Democratic Caucus. It is Tuesday, May 19th. Hopefully everyone's trying to stay cool and had a fun, sunny weekend. So we have 4 things on tap that we're going to try and get through. We have to be on the floor at 1. So the order will be, and I am going to rely on the presenters to say what the bill is because I just wrote down the numbers. 193, 208, 190, and then 212. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, Martin Malone, representative from South Burlington, Chair of the House Judiciary Committee. On S-193, the Forensic Facility Bill, and I may have to call on Chair Emmons if I get stuck on any of this. She's the expert on what a facility will look like in the future. But so we passed out the bill on Friday on a vote of 902. There was an amendment, pretty narrow amendment in Appropriations Committee that was voted out 10-01. There's another amendment that we haven't taken up or looked at yet that I believe it's going to be Chair Wood on behalf of the Human Services Committee. And we will be looking at that later this afternoon and having a little bit of testimony on that. So I'm hoping to have that one out by the end of the day, and hopefully this will be on the floor tomorrow. Just a very high level summary. The bill first establishes the process for individuals being placed or committed to a forensic facility, and also who can be committed to a forensic facility, and also exit ramps from the facility. That's one component, and that's really where the Judiciary Committee focused. And then there's a second component is really defining what the forensic facility should look like. We got a lot of input from the healthcare and human services on that. Really, it's a list that this is what a facility will look like. And then finally, there's a feasibility plan that by January 15th, we are to get a plan from the Agency of Human Services that once again really goes into really the operation and where the facility would be located. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that was pretty high level, but I don't want to bog you all down.
Questions?
Did I miss anything else?
Yep.
I'm Representative Alice Emmons from Springfield, Chair of Corrections and Institutions. The big piece that we worked on is really looking at the role of DOC. And the bill is very, very clear that clinical services that would be offered within the facility would be through the Agency of Human Services, not DOC. So it'd be your Department of Mental Health, it would be Dale, and there'd be a medical director, and it would be under the Agency of Human Services, not DOC. DOC would provide, if the facility is located on a correctional campus, so if it's a separate facility at a current correctional facility on the property, the DOC would provide security on the outside of that building, as well as the entrance into that building, which is where you would admit the public. DOC would not be involved in security of the folks in the living units and would not be providing clinical services. That's the real difference from the Senate version.
And I'm sorry, can you say the vote counts again for both committees?
My committee voted on a couple pieces of the bill that pertains to Section 5 and Section 7. Our committee vote was 10-1-0 in favor.
And since we had possession of the bill, we voted essentially on the whole bill, 902. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to take this off the notice calendar and move it along tomorrow, because I suspect, in fact, I'm quite sure that it will be going to conference committee, that the Senate will ask for a conference committee.
Great. Any questions? Really? All right.
All right. So S-208 is my understanding is going to be up this afternoon. Just a update, we did get it.
Yeah, sorry. I should ask Daisy if she wants to present the amendment. Do you want to present the amendment? I'm sorry.
Is this the first folks have heard of it?
Yeah, sorry, I should have done that
Yeah,
first.
no, that's good.
It's too hot to think straight.
It's Fire was all that.
Yeah.
Hi, Representative Rebecca from Winooski. Representative McGill and I are bringing an amendment which would bring back in the federal component of the masking ban. And my motivation for this is I represent Winooski, which has very strong and very clear feelings around that specific component of the bill. So we have high regard and appreciation for everything that this body has done the last couple of years in order to address some of our concerns around public safety. And this specific piece, though, is not yet addressed. So in talking with local law enforcement officers, we also hear that they are challenged to be dealing with folks coming into our communities who are masked, regardless of their affiliation. You know, federal agents coming in who are not coordinated, you know, they're not being expected by our local officers. There's no data on the back end or follow-up, so there's no way that we can identify whether these are legitimate federal agents. I just think we need to give our constituents, we need to give ourselves the chance to weigh in. I have respect for the work of the committee. My constituents do as well. My constituents need me to vote on this. I think I'll leave it at that.
Great, we'll let Martin go in committee and then do questions.
Yeah, so we did hear the amendment. Actually, we spent a lot of time with this language earlier in the session because it's a language that we had before we took the feds out, so we were quite familiar with it. And like the language, but there continues to be the issue of constitutionality. And I agree that it's egregious what we're seeing nationally, that law enforcement should have to identify themselves and not wear masks to hide their identity is a number one reason they're using a mask. But the states just don't have the authority under the Constitution, in my view, to do so. And so we voted on, the vote was 8-1 to find the amendment unfavorable. And we'll see what happens this afternoon.
Questions?
Hi, Representative Dodge, Essex. I fully sympathize and was a co-sponsor of the House version of the same bill measure and worked really, really hard to gather a really broad coalition of supporters within the legislature and advocates and allies outside of the legislature, because I 100% agree that that these are scary times and that our democracy and our trust in law enforcement are undermined by masked agents that are unidentifiable, right? It could be anybody. I am concerned that after reading the Ninth Circuit ruling, it becomes adamantly clear that they're not willing to undermine the supremacy clause or a public safety interest. And I think that there's historical precedent for why we would want feds to be able to go into a state and establish public safety. If you think about civil rights issues in the 60s, right? If the patterns were reversed. But regardless, it's what we have to deal with. And we did, on the other hand, have a judge recently rule that ICE enforcement cannot happen in courts in New York. And we have passed a lot of legislation that gives us concrete measures that we can actually take, and I know you took those into consideration. My big concern is that we would be potentially losing the ability to do what we can constitutionally do, which is to control how our police operate. And even that will take time because of rulemaking and because of those committees that have to develop these new policies. And so I don't want to delay that and I don't want to risk that. And for that reason, I want to move forward with what's likely to happen and it's likely to help, and which is something that the communities have asked for.
Can I respond to that real quick? Thank you, Leonora. It's really important that you weigh in on this. I know that you've done significant work looking into this. I just want to note, I am not focused on constitutionality. I think this is much bigger than that. I think I was not elected to determine whether something is constitutional or not. I know that House Judiciary heard a lot of testimony on that. However, I think that what masked federal agents are doing in our communities is not constitutional in itself. And we do not fight authoritarianism with the argument of constitutionality. I don't. And we all have a vote. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful that we have the ability to represent our own communities as they want us to.
Another comment, question. Michelle Boslin, Wyndham 3. This is a comment. So just first, in regard to the constitutionality issue, we had a community meeting in my community on Saturday. And we actually asked our members, what do you think of this? We described the whole situation, how complex it was. And we said, should we vote for it just for the state and make sure that we can get the state police officers to not mask, or should we aim for the higher level and maybe it'll get shot down? Two things. One, people said the constitutional decision that was ruled on was in the Ninth Circuit Court, and that's in California. We're in, I believe, the Second Court. So we don't even know that the court here would judge it the same way. Second thing, and I was very surprised by this, 100% of the people that spoke when we asked what their opinion was said Vermont needs to stand for our values, and our values are standing up to what's happening on the national level. We need to say no. The whole thing is wrong. And if you are only voting for the state because that's the safe decision, that is not representing that. My understanding of what my constituents was saying was that was not what they want. They wanted us to aim higher and let the courts figure out what makes sense, not for us to try and determine the constitutionality piece.
Anyone else?
Okay, anything else for me to review?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next is Representative Black with an amendment to S-190.
Oh. Representative Melissa Black, Essex, Chair of House Healthcare. So S-190, I'm glad you didn't have the titles of these bills because I want to remind everybody. The title of this bill is an act relating to the Green Mountain Care Board and reference-based pricing. This bill started as, so just a little bit in Act 68, which was bill we did last year, we required that reference-based pricing begin by the Green Mountain Care Board. We have tasked the Green Mountain Care Board with implementing reference-based pricing, that it begin for hospital fiscal year 27. That is October of this year, hospital, and they will go through an entire budget review process. Budget orders will be given, and the Green Mountain Care Board will determine the hospital's budget orders. It became apparent that due to the length of rulemaking, that they would not be able to implement reference-based pricing for starting this October. So this bill started as the legislature giving the authority to the Green Mountain Care Board to begin reference-based pricing this year. So statute trumps rule. So that's how it started. It's gone through many incarnations through the Senate and the House. And it sort of became apparent that as it was sort of moving through, that it was becoming more of a legislative regulatory process around hospital budgets. We don't do that. The Green Mountain Care Board does that. They have done that since their inception. It is a long-standing process that goes through rules and appeals and things like that. So when we passed the bill out, so what we wanted to do in this year was we wanted to concentrate reference-based pricing in two markets, the two sort of most vulnerable markets right now in Vermont, which are the QHP, the qualified health plans, that is individuals in the individual exchange, as well as small groups, which are small employers that have no other options of purchasing insurance for their employees other than for the small group. So those are the QHPs, they're called. And we regulate those, and we regulate the rates for those, the Green Mountain Care Board does. Additionally, we wanted to target it to the VHI, which is Vermont Educational Health Insurance. That is the insurance for all of our state's educators, families. That is one of the drivers of our increasing education budgets. And so we really wanted to focus, if we were going to do reference-based pricing and we were going to, continue to find some savings out of hospitals, which the hospitals have all agreed that they are doing, and they have targets and they're working really hard, that we wanted to concentrate that onto these two markets. So the bill as originally passed out of the House had all sorts of different mechanisms about 3.5%, and then set it to 350 and then 300. And it just became that we stopped doing reference-based pricing and we were more getting into hospital budget review. So I am offering an amendment, and it left our committee on a vote of 10-1-0. And then I am offering, it was in Ways and Means, I'm offering an amendment to it, which essentially removes and gets back to what the core of the bill started as, which is when the Green Mountain Care Board is doing their hospital budget orders, whatever guidance they come out with and any money that is saved, it should be saved by doing reference-based pricing for 2027. It's just for 1 year on the QHP market and VHI. That's the amendment. It simplified it, and it got back to what the core of the bill was, which is giving the Green Mountain Care Board authority in 27 before their rulemaking is finished to start implementing reference-based pricing.
And what, sorry, there's.
Oh.
Yeah, I think John,
You good, and then I'll come over.
Representative. Oh, sorry, Representative Bruce Bennington. Representative Black, how much do you think that the savings will be on those two plans? No estimate, right?
No estimate, because it's determined by the Green Mountain Care Board in whatever their budget orders are for this year. Stay tuned and look for the October or September 30th letter.
Representative Lally Shelburne, are the QHP, the small groups, is that also cover associations, or is that?
No, association, that would be a self-insured market, and we don't have any, they're considered ERISA plans, and we don't have any control over ERISA plans.
Thank
Those
you
are
for the clarification.
federal.
John, you've heard of it, see, President Black, I understand that what we don't know was when actually be, you're not care board, that could potentially have, an impact on some of the, education property tax rates that we're seeing around the state?
Well, it would immediately lower the costs of care for that market, for the educators' health insurance. How school budgets, I'm leaving that to other committees, but how those savings would be, would play out in rate reductions for their health plans, their, the amount that they would be paying in co-insurance, and whether or not school budgets take that savings and put it into something else, that's for other committees, not.
But I would make it for the year 2027.
It would be for the year 2027. It would have an immediate effect on January 1st of 27.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Great, so that's still working through committees.
Do you want me to get the vote on the amendments?
Yeah.
So the amendment came out of our committee on a vote of 7-4-0.
Great, thank you. All right, the last bill is S212. And so I'm gonna have Will and Ella come up. As you all know, Will had an amendment last week. There was some work done over the weekend. Will has withdrawn that amendment, and now Ella and Will together are bringing an amendment. Sorry, I'm not using my sleeves. Okay, it's too hot. So I'm gonna start with Ella.
Sure. So you'll all remember, hopefully you were here on Friday morning and heard quite a bit about the amendment and the issues around isolation distances and overshadowing that happens with septic systems and potable water systems from one property. But sometimes that isolation distance affects the neighboring property owner, what they can do in that area of their property where that overshadowing occurs. And I went through the amendment and explained why portions of the amendment weren't satisfactory to our committee. And then over the weekend, Representative Greer and I worked on an amendment together that really focuses on I think the core issue that Representative Greer was trying to get at. It now requires, it really just focuses on the Agency of Natural Resources team. They have a technical advisory committee that we were talking about on Friday that already meets regularly and talks about overshadowing and sort of the technical issues and sort of, and the neighbor to neighbor conflicts that happen. And they already report annually to the legislature. And so we came up with some additional points that they will specifically report to the legislature on next January, really aiming more at data that they have around when this overshadowing occurs, alternatives that they are aware of and the frequency that this happens, and also some recommendations, particularly around process within, which is an area that they have in their own rules already. For example, right now, when they notify a neighbor, when a neighbor gets notified, they have 7 days to sort of let the neighboring property owner know they're concerned about the overshadowing. So, maybe there could be some looking at that length of time or looking at additional steps that could happen in that process. So we're expecting those recommendations and data to come back in January. And we also brought up some issues around the really the legal side of this. There was language in Representative Greer's original amendment around compensation for landowners, whether that should be mandatory. And we have taken the legal aspects out of this because it's really not our committee's area of jurisdiction, nor the ANR's technical advisory committee's area of expertise. But we have made some progress over the weekend talking with the Bar Association, very much to Chair Lund and others helping make that connection. And I think between legislators, Leg Council, and the Bar Association, there'll be some work during the off session on this point that doesn't need to be in statute. So that's sort of how we left things with the amendment.
I was gonna say, I think Ella did a great job of summarizing that, and we got this through, and I think the only thing was just that the vote was 11-0-0 for committee.
Great, any questions on that one? So as a reminder on 212, we also have another amendment from Representative Tagliavia. The vote count on that, do you remember? I know it was unfavorable.
7-3.
7-4 unfavorable. And we're asking you to support the committee and vote no. Any announcements or anything else before we go back to the floor? Rita?
I just want to say,
hold on.
Wendy-
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. This is to the Caucus. So. I want to say Wendy and I have to go to a public meeting with our planning commission. We're on the planning commission, and we won't be able to make the event tonight. And I just want to say, I don't know if I'll get a chance to say goodbye to everybody.
Oh, we still have a lot of time here. We're adjourning today.
I just wanted to say. If I recognize you won't be.
Thanks, everyone. See you on the floor at 1.